All right. This is the Tell Me About It podcast. I'm Stella Graham. This is where I get to talk to people who know some stuff because I need it, because I am a little bit thick, people. Now, my guest today is the fabulous MP Taiwo Owatemi. Hello.
Hi, Stella. You're ever so kind. Thank
It's
you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for doing it. If you're not familiar with Taiwo, not only is she the awesome MP for Coventry North, did I get that right?
Northwest.
Northwest. See, I told you I was thick, Taiwo. I'm ruining it already. And I've looked into some of your wonderful career. I see that before you were elected, you were a senior oncology pharmacist in an NHS cancer unit.
Yes, I was, and it was actually one of the fundamental things that got me thinking about how politics and policies affect everyday life.
Wow. So you sound like a bright button. You sound very intelligent. Because that's not. I don't think I could do it because, as we've established, I'm not that bright. But I also remember the first time I saw you. So I was born in Coventry, grew up there, spent most of my years there, since moved away, and I hadn't really kept up with who the politicians are in Coventry. And then one day I'm watching a clip of the news and I saw you talking very passionately about the free school meals campaign. And I thought, oh, who is this? Very interesting. Because it was nice hearing somebody talk with such passion and I'll be honest, I usually find politics very boring. I'm sorry. But you talk about it with such an energy that I thought I really want to listen to what you have to say, which leads me nicely into I need knowledge, Taiwo. So can you tell me what is it like being an MP?
Oh, well, that's a tricky question because no two days are the same. Some days I wake up at 7 a.m. and finish at midnight, and some days um, it's more flexible in terms of what kind of meetings I'm having. So I would say every day I meet up with different constituents or different organisations and charities to talk about how I can support them or the challenges that they are facing. When I speak to constituents, I speak to them generally about issues that are going on in Coventry, but as well nationally. So it could be about housing, universal credit, furlough, the vaccine, absolutely anything that anybody wants to talk about. And sometimes it's just people wanting to talk to me about what's going on and how they think that Coventry can change, and that's absolutely fine. Um, then I also get involved with constituency campaign and policy work. So that's looking at what is going on in the constituency and what changes we can do to improve the quality of life of people locally. So some of the things I'm passionate about is education, and I'm passionate about the environment, and I am passionate about health. So a lot of the policies and campaigns that I've been working on throughout this year is just ensuring that whatever changes happens locally is to the maximum benefit of people in the constituency. And then on top of that, I actually belong to two select committees.
Okay.
So one is international trade and the other is health and social care committee. And a lot of that every single week we're doing different inquiries into areas, policy areas, and seeing what we can do to what recommendations we can provide for the government to improve in the area of health and trade.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, I'm also the chair of two APPGs. So I'm part of the Knife and Crime APPG and Erasmus APPG. And part of my role
Sorry,
is
Taiwo. I'm a little bit thick. What's an APPG?
no, it's my fault. I'm so used to the parliamentary language and jargon. It's an all-party parliamentary group, and what that is a cross-party group of MPs who come together to scrutinise government policies, but also provide advice in policy areas. So with knife and crime, I decided to join that because knife crime is an increasing issue within the country, but particularly in the West Midlands as a West Midlands MP. And I wanted to make sure that the policies that were being created were not London focused and took
Uh-huh.
into account the different issues that was happening across various regions. So, and I'm working apart from that with different groups in the West Midlands to address that issue so that we can reduce the crime rate, the knife crime rate within Coventry in the West Midlands. But yeah,
So
like I
that's
said,
quite a lot, isn't it? I mean, you certainly keep busy.
I definitely do. No, I love it, but it is, my role is ever changing. It is very wide, but but I love it. But sometimes it can be really hard to remember whether or not I've eaten breakfast or lunch or just just the general things that that most people remember. But no, I really love it.
The basics of survival. So compared to, because obviously you worked in the NHS, I'm assuming you probably did some long hours there, but
Yeah.
now as an MP, longer it seems.
Yeah, it's weird, but I would say that both will have similarities and differences. So with regards to the NHS, that was a more structured background. So you kind of knew what you were doing every day and you can plan in advance. With Parliament, it doesn't matter how much planning you do, you just don't know. Meetings pop up on the day and you find yourself running from one place to the other. But both of them stretch me in terms of asking me to think wider, asking me to always review what I'm doing and how I can improve. And that's what I love about both roles.
So what I'm quite curious about is what sort of made you want to be an MP? Because let me tell you, I went to Caledon Castle, and at no point did any of the careers people go, do you know what, Stella? I reckon you'd do well in politics. Like it didn't really feel like a career option. And I am sadly old enough to remember when Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister. So it wasn't like I didn't see, oh, a woman can be like effectively the top job in politics. So it wasn't something that I thought, oh, maybe, but it certainly it didn't feel like a viable career path, certainly not as a school kid. So at what point did you think, oh yeah, I might do it?
Stella, I wouldn't say that I got that career advice either. I don't think any of my career advisors thought, oh, you'd be a great politician one day.
You're a natural, yeah.
No, but I think I've always been outspoken from a very young age. Even in sixth form, I remember challenging the school board about certain curriculums and how best to improve the school. I was I was definitely an enthusiastic student about ensuring that every voice was heard and that people's, I guess, the experiences of pupils were taken into account when the schools made a decision. And for me, I wouldn't say there's a short answer to what led me to politics. What I would say is I grew up a lot from a very young age watching the news. And I wouldn't say that got me into politics, but that opened my eyes into what was going on in just the general world and the community. And I remember actually my mum and my granddad taking the time to really explain just how the decisions were impacting the family, those around us in the world. And I would say that maybe subconsciously that would be my first exposure to politics. But I would say that I really started thinking about how politics and policies affect people's lives when I was really young, in terms of, I remember vividly actually when 2010, the transition that was going on and the increase in inequality and injustice that was happening, and how that change in government really affected the lives of my family and of those around me. And for the first time, I just felt really frustrated, and I felt that something had to be done about it. And I remember coming home one day angry, just generally angry about something to do with bin policy. It's really weird. You'd be surprised how bins really motivate people to come into politics. Honestly, you'd be surprised because not because the thing
well,
is,
I mean, when they don't get collected, it is proper annoying, if that's what you mean. I hear you.
because, well, free school meals was really something that impacted me. Access to health inequalities was an issue that I felt locally, because my GP appointments went from I can see him on the same day to I had to wait for 2 weeks. But I would say what really made me wake up one day and join Labour was I got home one day and I was angry about the bins and I was upset. And my mum said, you need to stop this. You come home upset and angry about so many different things, about policies that weren't affecting you, but you can't just come home and be angry every day. You either keep quiet or do something about it. but I don't want to be hearing you moaning every day. And I thought, that's fair enough. I would do something about it. And that made me join the Labour Party and actually go to meetings, but it also made me get involved in discussions at my workplace about health policies, health inequalities, what are we doing to address it? Why was a certain decision made? Have we thought about the impacts of patients? So I would say that discussion with my mum about bins that day pushed me above the line for somebody who was sitting and not doing much about it to somebody who thought actually political activism is needed here.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I know the council tend to deal with like litter being picked up and bin collections and stuff like that. So, I mean, this could have just been an angry email to the council, sort the bins out, and then you just carried on with your life and did something else. But I mean, and let's be real, I was an angry teenager. I still am. And but I still think it takes a certain something that drives you from that to like, no, I'm really going to make something happen here.
I think that was the line. But like I said, I grew up in one of the worst schools in London. I saw it was normal for me to see after school, when I finished school, the police being around and gangs and everybody wondering whether or not this was going to be the day. It was normal to see a classmate die and another one go to prison for killing them. It was half of my mates were on free school meals, and let's just say that I was exposed to a lot of stuff at a very young age that always got me thinking about, why isn't anybody listening to us?
Wow.
And when is it going to be our turn to ensure that we get the justice and the protection that we need? And even becoming a healthcare politician, I became increasingly frustrated about just how healthcare is funded in different areas of the country. And having worked in different NHS trusts, some of them are excellently run and provide the best, and some of them, as much as they want to, they haven't been given the necessary resources to meet for them to be able to provide that provision. And it was just watching everything around me and seeing that things were not improving. That is the reason why I used to go home every day complaining.
Fair enough.
Frustrated.
Yeah. I think you win roughest school contest out of the two of us. Caledon Castle seems like Eton by comparison, because even though I thought it was rough, it wasn't probably quite so. We didn't have the police round so many, and certainly not the body count by the sounds of things. That sounds really scary. I did wonder. I was curious. How did you end up? Because if you grew up in London, being an MP for Coventry, I like to think that they do it sort of like the FA Cup draw, where they have like a bag of balls and they rummage around and go, Taiwo Owatemi will go to Coventry. Is it a bit like that?
It's not as exciting as that. I'm sorry to say that actually, before you are selected for an area, you need to be able to explain why you want to represent that area, and that's right, to explain your connection, your understanding of the issues within that area. I have family in Coventry and I often came to visit Coventry, so for me I understood a lot of the challenges that was going on in Coventry, and I spent quite a few time in Coventry just in general through life. And hence why when I decided to represent Coventry, the party actually sat me down, sat all the candidates down and went through a rigorous process of trying to understand how best we could make a positive impact to the constituency and to the city. What is it that we had that we could give, not only in terms of policy areas, but in terms of our past experiences with activism that was important to Coventry. And the party wanted to ensure that whichever candidate was selected, so we have different selection phases, but whichever candidate got down to the top three essentially were the best candidates who they believed would be able to support the growth and support constituents. So
you already were familiar with the place. You'd spent a bit of time in Cov.
Oh yes, no, absolutely. Coventry was just a normal familiar ground to me. It has quite a growing and a big Nigerian community. A lot of people don't realise that. So Coventry is just, and the West Midlands was just a second home.
Right. Fair
so
enough.
for me, it was just a natural. It's weird when people ask in that conversation. I was like, actually, through my life experiences, it was just a natural place for me to say, this is where I wanted to represent.
Okay. So you know your way around the ring road is what I'm trying to get to. Because that could have been a shocker.
Anybody knows their way around the ring road.
I tell you, I since I've been back and I've been there, I'm like, oh, they've actually improved the signs. Because when I was driving, when I was 17 and I got my first total knacker of a car, trying to navigate my way around, and I grew up there. You'd think I knew it, but I'd still be like, is it this one? There were no signs. So it's definitely got better. One thing I was going to ask about, because I love that you have such a good Twitter presence. You're on Instagram, you're very active on social media, which is great for sort of the younger generation, I would say, younger to middle. But you obviously have to appeal to older voters as well. And be thankful my mom is not on Twitter. And she still lives in Coventry. So, and I think your colleague Colleen has the joy of that's the area of Cov that my mum lives in. So you're one of your Labour colleagues. But how do you sort of balance appealing to the constituents? Is that the right word? Through
the different age groups.
Yes.
Within my constituency.
Yes.
That's a very good question. But I would say that when I communicate with people for different means, so with the more elderly population, before COVID, I was actually going to some of the community groups to speak to them directly. During COVID, I've been writing letters to all constituents and encouraging them to get back. But those letters are also sent as emails to allow, I guess, people who are more technical or familiar with IT to respond back, and with letter envelopes for people who just prefer the old-fashioned lettering back. So that's a good way that I use to communicate. I also do a lot of phone calls. So I run Zoom surgeries so people can see me face to face. But for those constituents who are not, again, technically savvy, phone calls are a good way just to find out what's going on and to see how I can help them. And then with my younger generation, it's mine. It's about social media, so Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You'd be surprised how Facebook is intergenerational. It appeals to different age groups. So I make sure that a lot of my information is on Facebook and on different groups within the community, so that every age group can have the information that is needed. And then I work with different charities and organizations who have a bigger reach as well, so that they can disseminate any information that I want. And actually, I was reading the other day about the importance of connecting with Generation Z and how TikTok is.
I was just about to say, are you on TikTok yet? No, moonwalking across the kitchen just to sort of stay in touch.
I spent this weekend going, how am I going to show Generation Z what an MP does? And so I'm brainstorming and working with the team on how to get onto TikTok to ensure that younger generations are more involved with politics that's happening nationally and locally. So I think about all the different groups within my constituency, and I even break it down to female groups in terms of female-male groups, different ethnicities, just to ensure that as the information is accessible to all members of my constituency.
I think it's such a nice thing to be able to just say, well, what do you do? And then, oh, wow, just a quick run through your Twitter feed or your Facebook or Instagram just to see what you're up to. It's nice to have that visibility just in your pocket, really, just on the phone. We are getting to that point in the pod. Everybody loves a shout out. Would you like to shine a spotlight on a mate?
Absolutely. The mate that I want to shine the spotlight on is Shay-ee, and Shay-ee is the founder of Glitch, which is a non-profit organisation that aims to end online abuse through education, campaign and advocacy. And she started this through her own lived experiences, and that made her think about how I am a BAME MP, and I'm going to be honest, that I am subjected to some abuse online, and I know many of my colleagues are. So this is something that I feel passionate about. And Shay has done a lot of work, and she has a lot of expertise in developing practical solutions for governments, for NGOs, for companies, about how to address online abuse and protect public spaces from hate and abuse. And honestly, I admire her work, I admire her resilience, and I admire that she was able to turn such horrific experiences online into a positive one, and the fact that she is working hard to prevent other people from experiencing such abuse online. So I think she is a brilliant example of just great activism. And I think that she honestly deserves a shout out for just being a wonderful person.
That sounds great. Shay Glitch, I'll be sure to check it out. I will, of course, post links to all this good stuff on the YouTube video and in the podcast notes. But is there anything else you want to plug before we let you get back to the very busy life of being an MP?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I am accessible, and my main aim is that I want Coventry to be the best place to grow up in and to grow old in. So if anyone has any ideas or any suggestions on how I can ensure that happens, and they think that we can make that happen, then my office is always open, and I am always a friendly face. If you see me on the road, say hi. I don't bite.
Nice. I did want to ask one question. Now that you're on the ladder of politics, would you ever fancy the top job one day?
That's my answer to that. Oh gosh,
A squeal.
Honestly, it is.
You must have like a 10-year, 20-year plan. Is it or are you still so new to it that you're like, I'm not so sure I want to?
No. I have. I think like everyone, you have a 10-year and 20-year plan, but the one thing about the role of an MP is that it's changing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
What we were asked to be doing when I came in last year, it's completely different from what the role was going to be looking like this year. So it is, I would say that it's impossible for one to clearly plan one's career path. Whereas as a pharmacist, I knew exactly after this many years, this is going to happen, this is what I'm going to do. As an MP, for me, it's all about growing and ensuring that I have the necessary skills and expertise to be able to contribute effectively to the policy areas in which I am passionate about.
That was a very nice, adept politician answer. I liked it. I have often wondered this. Did they teach you that in politics school where it's like, okay, if you get a fishy question that you don't like the look of, you just, because I wondered, like, I want to try that next time I get pulled over for speeding, you know, like if a copper says to me, do you know how fast you were going? I'd be like, well, I don't think we really want to talk about how fast I was going, but what we should talk about is the NHS and the good work they're doing. And just see if I can talk my way out of a ticket. I think that's mostly what I want to learn from being an MP. Taiwo, it's been absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I know you are super busy. As I said before, all the links to all your good stuff will be posted in the YouTube link and in the podcast notes. And of course to Shay with the wonderful work of Glitch. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Stella, for having me. And it was really great being here. I've had a wonderful time and I've enjoyed my experience. And I hope to be back one day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.